the traditional media are controlled by the government or owned by the government. And because of the political situation, a lot of this media is publishing news that is supporting the government. So when internet came into being, a lot of people use the social media to share information, to express their views on political issues, on social issues, on daily issues. And because of the propaganda in the traditional media, so there is a distrust, by the people on the information in traditional media. So a lot of people tends to believe more, information in social media. So that is a trend also that is developing in many Asian countries where the political system is undemocratic and mainstream media are controlled by the governments or the ruling parties. Yeah, I think it has been used since when internet was created. So in the early 90s, in the early 90s, and so people have been using that to share information through email, starting with emails, and then later on, then you have all these sharing of videos, through YouTube, and then you have now, of course, you have the blogs, and you can create your own websites to share information, and then now you have social media like Facebook, like Twitter, that you can post a lot of information and your opinion on many issues. And the government, because of the structure of social media and internet, is very flat. It is not a pyramid structure where the government, when they control the gate, on top, then all the information will be blocked. But for internet, it is very flat, so everybody can be the provider of information. It's not just the radio or television controlled by the government or newspapers. So that this is the power of the internet and social media, and that is why now the governments, many governments in Asia, are really worried about this challenge from the internet and social media, and they want to control the internet now. For traditional media, for instance, to start a television station, it involves millions of dollars. To start a radio station, you have to have a lot of money, but to start an internet radio, you can just do it, with very small investment, and immediately you can reach out to millions of people, not only in your country, but all over the world. So that's why it is very powerful. I think the figures that I have seen is that the internet users all over the world is about 2 billion. 2 billion. So once you are connected to internet, you can actually reach out to 2 billion people, but with the cost of maybe a few dollars. It's about, I think, 20 million 20 million out of a population of about 60 million. So the rate is about 30%. Yeah, 30% of penetration of internet. So many people in the city, of course, they have access to internet, but it would be probably more difficult for people in the rural areas to access internet, and there are many reasons for that. But the poverty is one main reason that prevent people from accessing internet, and that is the case for Laos, also the case for Timor-Leste, where you have less than 1% of the population having access to internet. So there is a big gap, the digital divide, between the more developed countries and the poor countries, and between the cities and the rural areas within the country. The social media has played a very important role in creating and supporting the revolution in Egypt, in Tunisia, in many countries in the Middle East. And that is also because the traditional media has not been able to report the opinions and views of the people. The general public use the social media to share information and to organize themselves in protest. And that is the only channels that is available to the people. And again, we have talked about how the social media and internet is accessible to many people, is connected to the network, and you are able to reach out to so much more people, through the internet, and with immediate results. I send a text, you immediately receive it in the next seconds, so that is very different from the traditional media. For instance, newspapers, you put out a press statement, it may not be reported by the newspapers, but even if it is reported by the newspapers, it only come out the next day. So in terms of the speed, it is very different from the traditional media. And in terms of the control, it's very difficult for, but even in the case of Burma, even though it is still slow, people has been using it to advocate for democracy, for human rights. So for Arab regions, I think, it is definitely social media has played a very crucial, instrumental role. I think it is possible. It is possible. Let me take the example of the Philippines. The Philippines, the people's power, the movement, the people's movement who topple the President Estrada. So the campaign has been the social movement in Philippines has used extensively the SMS, through mobile phones, to send out messages, for political campaigns, and in the end, it's proved to be very successful, and people actually, topple President Estrada for corruption. And so in the same time, I think in Asia, now of course it's more advanced now with internet, and now you can link to mobile phones, and using mobile phones you can connect to Facebook, you can connect to Twitter, you can use so many applications, social media applications on mobile phones. And in Asia, many people might not be able to buy a computer, but many more people have mobile phones. So mobile phones can be a very important tools, in Asia for such a revolution. And people can use this with the internet access to share information, to discuss issues, and that will break the monopoly of information and monopoly of news by the ruling regime in many countries. So I see much potential, and unless I think the governments in the region have to recognize that people have the right, to express their views, and they have the right to participate in the politics, in the political development in the country. And if they continue to block media, then people will find other ways to express themselves and to challenge and to change government, because it doesn't protect the rights of the people when they are supposed to be representing the people. Yes, definitely. I think many governments are worried that Arab Spring will happen in their own countries, especially with the use of internet and social media, and that is why we are seeing many Asian governments are tightening the laws, and introducing many new legislations to control the internet and social media. So in the case of Vietnam, they are now looking at a new law to make all websites and internet users to register your real name, and so you cannot post in a message anonymously. And in Sri Lanka now they are talking about getting all websites to be registered with the government. So if you don't register with the government, you cannot create websites in Sri Lanka, and then you have to pay such a huge amount just to register a website. And this is all a way to control internet and to control the internet users. And I believe this is because of the worry that Arab Spring will happen in Vietnam, will happen in Sri Lanka. To improve the situation, this is the international community's obligation to promote freedoms in the internet, and this needs collaboration from all stakeholders. It should there should be a multi stakeholders dialogue, on how to address all these issues. It should not be just the responsibility or the power of the government, but also it should involve the corporations that provide services. It should include international organizations that supporting the internet's infrastructure globally, and it should include civil society organizations and the net users who are using the internet, because this is a system that is that should have a say on the whole structure. And secondly, I think it is very important for all governments to comply with international human rights standards. This is the global values, universal values, that is a minimum standard that should be followed by all governments, in all their policies. And so for internet, the same thing, that the government should ensure all the laws and the policies are complying with international human rights standards, because this is to ensure that all of us have the right to use the internet freely for the benefits of the society, of individuals, for the whole country, and for the whole world. So I think the one is civil society has to be involved in the process, and secondly, I think international organizations have to sanction governments that have violating all these human rights by introducing these kind of laws that restricting information, restricting the freedom of people to express and to share information. So I think there should be more cooperation, especially between international organizations that involved in the designing of the internet structure with the governments, and also involve United Nations agencies like the UN Office for the High Commissioner for Human Rights, so that these policies that are introduced by international organizations and governments do not violate the rights of the internet users and the general public. So we have to put a stop to this kind of laws, and this kind of laws have to be challenged, and it has to be abolished or amended, so that they are in compliance with international human rights standards. I think in Japan it is very developed, the internet infrastructure, and many people have access to internet. It is probably one of the highest in Asia, and so far I think the internet has been used quite extensively in Japanese society for many issues, and we are also very impressive with the experience of like earthquake and tsunami, and how internet can be used to share a lot of important information to the general public in a very timely manner, and I think that is very important, and it is a very good experience that should be shared with many more other countries in the region, because I think this is a good example for many countries to help mitigate the relief, to victims of disasters. The regime was afraid that that all the corruption and all the ineffectiveness of the government will be exposed, in handling the disasters. So they block, they block a lot of information from going out. But that doesn't help the situation, because people need information to know where to go, where to get the food, where to get water, where to get shelter, and some areas are really urgent and need immediate support, and rescue, and internet can play a role to immediately, give that kind of information, and but many governments in the region always try to block this kind of information when there is disasters happen, and for instance the disease, I remember, I think it was in Hong Kong and China, the SARS disease, when it was spreading, and then the government initially didn't want to share the information to the general public, and that put the general public in danger, because people didn't know that there is a disease, such disease, and it can be infected through this kind of ways, and they didn't take prevention measures, and a lot of people get infected because they didn't get the sufficient important information. So that is why for civil society we are always emphasizing it is important to have the right to information and the right to freedom of expression. Yeah, because otherwise people become a victim, and they didn't get the necessary information to help. So I think the Japanese situation set a good example, and it should be, that kind of experience should be a lesson for many other Asian governments. Yes, yeah, of course because Japan is a democratic country, and it's an important country in the region. Japan can also play an important role in supporting democracy and human rights in the Asian region, and play a leading role in promoting and protecting human rights and democracy. And this is not confined to a country, and these values should be promoted across borders. And I believe in the long term, human rights and democracy would not only help Japan. These values, when it is promoted and protected in other countries, it also helps Japan, because then you will have a more stable neighboring countries in the region. And nowadays there are many issues that happen in another country but will have effects on Japan. For instance, environmental pollution, it will go across borders. So, but if the source of the environmental pollution in that country, and then the people are not able to hold the government accountable and to take measures to address the pollution, and the pollution can affect Japan. So I think it is important for Japanese government to see this and to support, democracy and human rights of the peoples in other countries, so that in return it will also help Japan and help the whole region, to develop a society that is sustainable, that is peaceful, and that is stable. If people are not able to express the problems that they face, they have to find other ways, and some of them actually take very extreme ways of expressing them, and that is how conflict take place in many countries, because there is no democratic channels to discuss issues, to address the problems, and for the government to respond, respond to their problems. So then some took up arms, some resort to terrorism, and terrorism affect everyone. If they bomb an aeroplane, there are many nationalities in the aeroplanes. You might have Japanese in the aeroplane. You might have people who are born in the streets, in another countries. So I would really urge, that Japanese government as well as Japanese people to extend, your support and solidarity to the neighboring countries, and it is for the common goods, common interest of the region.